2025 ബോർഡ് എക്സാമിലും വിവിധ എൻട്രൻസ് എക്സാമുകളിലും ബ്രില്യൻസ് സ്റ്റഡി സെന്ററിലെ വിദ്യാർത്ഥികൾ തന്നെയാണ് ഏറ്റവും മുൻപന്തിയിൽ. നമ്മൾ കണ്ടു CBSE Plus Two റിസൾട്ട് പ്രഖ്യാപിച്ചപ്പോൾ കേരളത്തിന്റെ 14 ജില്ലകളിൽ നിന്നുമായി 1200-ലധികം മലയാളി വിദ്യാർത്ഥികളാണ് ഫുൾ A1 കരസ്ഥമാക്കിയിരിക്കുന്നത്. അവരെല്ലാം ബ്രില്യന്റിയൻസ് ആണ്. നിരവധി വിദ്യാർത്ഥികളാണ് ബ്രില്യന്റിൽ നിന്നും CBSE Plus Two ബോർഡ് എക്സാമിൽ വൻ വിജയം കരസ്ഥമാക്കിയിരിക്കുന്നത്. പാർട്ട് 1-ലെ വിദ്യാർത്ഥികളെ നിങ്ങൾ എല്ലാവരും കണ്ടു കഴിഞ്ഞു. അപ്പോ പാർട്ട് 2-ലേക്ക്
Raivan Sakariya 489 out of 500. Nikhil Karthik Suju 489 out of 500. Aisel Maria Sobit 489 out of 500. Safida Yasmin 489 out of 500. Ihan Muhammad 489 out of 500. Gogul Balakrishnan 489 out of 500. Dan Manuel Shibu 489 out of 500. Aaron Aju 489 out of 500. Risa K 489 out of 500. Aparna Gobinath 489 out of 500. Arya Nanda Vinod 489 out of 500. Muhammad Rihan C 489 out of 500. Ritu Raksha Raj 489 out of 500. Sanjay Sunil 489 out of 500. Nilina M 489 out of 500. Arvind Jodish 489 out of 500. Gaudam Vadyut 489 out of 500. Maria Peter Mutat 489 out of 500. George Ryan Lewis 489 out of 500. Neha Elsa Biju 489 out of 500. Rishihesh S 489 out of 500. Gauri Jaykrishnan 489 out of 500. Nisida Trisa Aip 489 out of 500. Muhammad Rihan MR 489 out of 500. Tarun Harikrishnan 489 out of 500. Jovan John Chaco 489 out of 500. Alisa Sus John 489 out of 500. Harsha C 489 out of 500. Rohit John Mendes 489 out of 500. Amina S Akbar 489 out of 500. Akshida Shivashankaran 489 out of 500. Jairam CJ 489 out of 500. BS Sedmadhavan 489 out of 500. Lena S Tarath 489 out of 500. Aditya Radish 488 out of 500. Christy V Joby 488 out of 500. Irene Anna Wilson 488 out of 500. Salma Nasrin 488 out of 500. Abhinav Rajesh 488 out of 500. Karthik S Alinkil 488 out of 500. Vaishak KG 488 out of 500. Asmin Rashid PE 488 out of 500. Elsa Sales 488 out of 500. Agnes Anna Tony 488 out of 500. Joseph Paul Alfie 488 out of 500. Alan George Kappen 488 out of 500. Alisha VA 488 out of 500. Michael Kurikanil 488 out of 500. Risa Shobi 488 out of 500. Siddharth RC 488 out of 500. Kadambari Santosh 488 out of 500. Aaron Vinod 488 out of 500. Mehek Shanawaz Khan 488 out of 500. Fadil Muhammad K 488 out of 500. Asim Muhammad Salim 488 out of 500. Agnes Elsa Manoj 488 out of 500. Meenakshi 488 out of 500. Nivedita Ranjish 488 out of 500. Jess Jude AJ 488 out of 500. Sreya S Pillai 488 out of 500. Srihari Pradeep 488 out of 500. Astil Shinoj 488 out of 500. Melvin Timu 488 out of 500. Gayatri P Krishnan 488 out of 500. Shreya Chandran 488 out of 500. Bhavya 488 out of 500. Neil Varghese 488 out of 500. Hanna Fatima 488 out of 500. Neha SA 488 out of 500. Shreya Pramod 488 out of 500. Anna Rose Anto 488 out of 500. Emma L 488 out of 500. Gauri Nanda B 487 out of 500. Annette Augustine 487 out of 500. Donna Elizabeth Roy 487 out of 500. Tamanna TK 487 out of 500. Abel CB John 487 out of 500. Ari Nanda Binoj 487 out of 500. Apineet S 487 out of 500. Hanna Amil Latif, 487 out of 500. Cherian B. Koladi, 487 out of 500. Mehnas Aisha Firoz, 487 out of 500. Joshua Manoj, 487 out of 500. CP Amanjit, 487 out of 500. Anjana CR, 487 out of 500. Tom Joju, 487 out of 500. Nandana TP, 487 out of 500. Nayana Patmakumar, 487 out of 500. Leah Ann Baiju, 487 out of 500. Navina Rose Biju, 487 out of 500. Babies Biju, 487 out of 500. A. Hasna Suleiha, 487 out of 500. Tejas R. Nair, 487 out of 500. Anitra M, 487 out of 500. Muhammad Rishandan, 487 out of 500. Nandana Murali, 487 out of 500. Arya Krishna K, 487 out of 500. Alina Jalil, 487 out of 500. Annu Nanda SD, 487 out of 500. Sriya Sujit, 487 out of 500. NR Abdivesh, 487 out of 500. Nakshatra PK, 487 out of 500. Ria Mohan Jos, 487 out of 500. Harinandan V, 487 out of 500. Chelsa Anna Biju, 487 out of 500. Adrabi, 487 out of 500. Rafael Melvin Tatil, 487 out of 500. Krishnaveni Anish, 487 out of 500. Namida Kadkavil, 487 out of 500. Anne Maria Matthew, 486 out of 500. Jovan Thomas A, 486 out of 500. Diljit TS, 486 out of 500. Rashid Nihan, 486 out of 500. Shaiba Shafir, 486 out of 500. Abhinav A, 486 out of 500. Gauri KP, 486 out of 500. Sonia Jaykumar, 486 out of 500. Aman R, 486 out of 500. Ritul Nambiar, 486 out of 500. Rose Maria Matthews, 486 out of 500. Srilega S, 486 out of 500. Sarang S, 486 out of 500. Catherine Maria Shaji, 486 out of 500. Sam Grigor, 486 out of 500. Anjali Jomi, 486 out of 500. Anigas Dijit, 486 out of 500. Adul Abhinath, 486 out of 500. Patricia Joji, 486 out of 500. Anusha Shivaram, 486 out of 500. Tirtha Jodilal, 486 out of 500. Muhammad Rehan, 486 out of 500. Rohan Rajesh Jacob, 486 out of 500. Adina Nice, 486 out of 500. KS Sarang, 486 out of 500. Jonathan T. Joseph, 486 out of 500. Mahadevan Sanchu, 486 out of 500. Michael Reju, 486 out of 500. Muhammad Methab, 486 out of 500. Alina Susan Sandosh, 486 out of 500. Jonan Joy Jason, 486 out of 500. Hariram Rajesh, 486 out of 500. Alan George Cherian, 486 out of 500. Agash J. Dinesh, 486 out of 500. Anna Jessin, 486 out of 500. Meera Rajesh, 486 out of 500. Adish Koshi Kiran, 486 out of 500. Achudan Sanal, 486 out of 500. Abia Mariam Reji, 486 out of 500. Sriraj Tampan, 486 out of 500. Maria Jocelyn Bijoy, 486 out of 500. E. Badra Suresh, 486 out of 500. Fatima Hanna, 486 out of 500. Nahada Ansar, 486 out of 500. Angeline Mariam John, 486 out of 500. Madhav KS, 486 out of 500. Sarayas P, 486 out of 500. George Sijo, 486 out of 500. Shreya Deepa, 486 out of 500. Hadi Muhammad, 486 out of 500. Seba KV, 486 out of 500. Gauri M, 486 out of 500. Badra Abu, 486 out of 500. Ananya Panikar, 486 out of 500. Karthik Kiran, 486 out of 500. Afrin Sheban, 486 out of 500. Mayur Praveen Verma, 486 out of 500. Adil Omar, 486 out of 500. Krishna H, 485 out of 500. Rafael Kishore, 485 out of 500. Deviga Sajin, 485 out of 500. Muhammad Amin Qasim, 485 out of 500. Nadine V. Nelson, 485 out of 500. Diya Nobi, 485 out of 500. Ivan Vinod, 485 out of 500. Rohan S, 485 out of 500. Parvati M, 485 out of 500. Isha Samir, 485 out of 500. Sarah Elizabeth, 485 out of 500. Irene Mary Shaiju, 485 out of 500. Kansa Elish, 485 out of 500. Arya Warrior PV, 485 out of 500. Indranil Menon, 485 out of 500. Tom Biju, 485 out of 500. Anne Mary Anthony, 485 out of 500. Janet John, 485 out of 500. Devadath KV, 485 out of 500. Devagi Harish Nair, 485 out of 500. Nitya D, 485 out of 500. Manav R, 485 out of 500. Devananda Praveen, 485 out of 500. Rishi Radish Kurup, 485 out of 500. Jonathan Thomas, 485 out of 500. Anupriya M, 485 out of 500. G. Tarun, 485 out of 500. Shadia Shahjahan, 485 out of 500. Nasal Rahman EK, 485 out of 500. Muhammad Amin Qasim, 485 out of 500. Srihari Ranjit, 485 out of 500. Anaga R. Krishna, 485 out of 500. Nandana K, 485 out of 500. Aparna Anil Nair, 485 out of 500. Aaron Sanju Thomas, 485 out of 500. Michael Joe, 485 out of 500. Samjukta, 485 out of 500. Neeraj Priyan, 485 out of 500. Aishwarya Tejas, 485 out of 500. Jumana Shamir, 485 out of 500. Ryan Rajab Faisal, 485 out of 500. Naira Muhammad, 485 out of 500. Abhishek Unni, 485 out of 500. Aditya M. Malia, 485 out of 500. Madhav M. Nair, 485 out of 500. Omkar Ajay Nair, 485 out of 500. Jen Sharon Josh, 485 out of 500. Hasa Khadija, 485 out of 500. Neha AC, 485 out of 500. Samruddha Saji, 485 out of 500.
Brilliance Study Center, India's #1 coaching center for NEET and JEE.